Hey everybody, Pat Fitterer, Learning Consultant here at SAP Concur. I've done countless demos in my time here, and the most common question I get as those conclude is, how long is this going to take to set up? It's the most understandable question you could ask, and it's one that's difficult. It depends on the products you've purchased, the level of complexity your organization has. So what I've started doing with clients is actually just showing them what setup looks like, and then they can think about that within the context of their organization. Whether you view yourself as simple, medium, complex, my advice is always the same. Start simple, gain user adoption, get people excited, and then you can start to bake in some of those complexities that you think you have. So what we'll show you today is really what the simple setup looks like. Going through your expense types, setting up users, the things you're going to need to do to get set up in a way that's functional and exciting for the users. So I hope it's helpful. You're definitely going to go through this video and think of a few things that are not covered here. That's awesome. Use that as an opportunity to reach out to your sales rep and their associated solutions consultant, and we'll get you situated. Hope you enjoy. When setting up Concur, you'll be in your administration tab, and this will be done with your activation coach, but you'll go into expense and invoice settings, which is where we are now. And it's really a wizard-driven setup. It's much like things you set up in your own personal life today, where you walk through each of the steps required to have Concur live and active for the users. So where most organizations would start is in accounting, and that's where you're going to go in, select the industry you work in, the accounting software you're working with, and a couple other questions, just to get you going on the right track. There's no sense in going down the road of things that don't pertain to your ERP or things that are important to you. We've learned a lot from our clients over the years. Other things that will obviously be important to you, you just work your way down this list: credit cards, custom fields, but obviously your users will be a critical part of this. If you have a small amount you're setting up at the onset, you may just want to go one by one with create new user, fill out their email, manager information, if they're active, those kinds of things. I'm always an advocate for, if you can make it easier, do it. So things like the employee import are always nice. You just fill out the pertinent information that would be in that entry field. You can see the blue bolded here are the things that are required. And then there's actually is active yes or no available. So that way you can just keep an ongoing list of your employees and upload as you onboard new people, rather than going one by one. Other important things are, things like, what do you spend money on, your expense types for your expenses. So when you click into that, you'll see your active expense types. You can keep some in a inactive state as well, and then the categorization of it. So if you want like meals and entertainment to follow a certain set of rules, and then you'll see you even get to create the expense form of what am I filling out based on those expense types. So if it's a meal, do you need attendees, those kinds of things. What you're eating, doing, drinking are only part of it. And it also is around, who are you meeting with, what client, what department is that on behalf of? That's where your cost centers will be put into custom fields. So you just get to manage those here. So if you tracked a department, client, and company or things like that, you just create it. Type would be if you want it to be a list or a free-form box that people out, and then you just go to manage list items and you'll have a list of the fields being tracked. Once again, you have the opportunity to import. So a good example might be if you have a huge client list of thousands of clients, you're probably not going to go one by one and keep maintaining that. That's where you can keep this, and you can see it's just a 2-column field, client A, B, and C item codes, and those will work their way into these fields we track here. So I'll actually just go to manage list items so you can see what that looks like under client here. So that's where they'd reside, and you can see where you import lists is just by clicking this import list button. A couple other things: compliance. What I've shown so far is very much the what, the information you're filling out, but there's also a lot of best practices about what Concur is auditing for you. So rather than having to configure all of that and think about those things, we've created a list of best practices that are just simple checkboxes where you drop down, say I want to flag things like miscellaneous, I want to look for duplicate expenses, those kinds of things, and then you can go through your receipt handling options, what you want your expense limits to be, things like that. And then finally, where does an expense report go and why? You get to just lay out what is your organizational approach. Do we want it to just go a manager and then to the processor? Do we want it to go elsewhere? You get to select those things. And if you want to go custom and route by project or anything like that, you'd select that there. So as a user, I'm in my expense report now. We can take a look at the result of your efforts in the setup. So I could go into this lunch here, and you can see this is the list of expense types you would have created. So you can see, remember that groupings I talked about. You can have your transportation category, your meals and entertainment category, and then transaction date. But remember, we did that client list. That's where this would reside, and all the coding would be behind the scenes. If you want that to be exposed to the user, it can be. So the work we were doing was to build the user, Pat, who exists here, the expense type, the list of things I pulled down from what I was spending on behalf of. Those things can be hard coded too if I always map to a particular department. But just want to give you the real life look at what that looks like, and you can actually do that in mass with the various expenses you have on your expense report. From there, you'll hit submit report, and it'll be off to that approval that you've created during setup for where it goes and why. Can't stress enough, but all of this is able to be done via mobile as well, just showing it on the desktop so you have a little more real estate to see. I hope that was a helpful walkthrough of what the setup of SAP Concur looks like. I feel lucky every day that I work for an organization that sells a product that is easy to set up and delivers value quickly. If you have any specific questions about your organization, I'd strongly encourage you to reach out to your regional sales executive, and perhaps we'll even cross paths in the future. I hope you have a great day.